So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day and this is Systemize Your Success. Hi Christian, really good to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Steve. Thank you very much for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
All right, cool. So I wanted to just start really with going a little bit into your backstory, because I think it's absolutely fascinating, and one that I think when people hear it, they'll be inspired that, you know, there is another way of doing life if people find themselves stuck in a business or a career which they're not particularly fond of and they're not really getting what they want from it. So I just, for a few minutes, want to just go back there, and then we're going to talk a lot more about what you're doing right now, because that is absolutely gold for any business owner to be able to create, you know, extra streams of income. So that is what the main focus is going to be. But I don't want to miss out on this initial part of your history, if that's okay with you. So if we go back to when you wrote Sack Your Boss, which was a book in 2018. And if anyone hasn't read it, I recommend reading it. It's full of absolutely brilliant insights and quotes and just methods and a system basically for creating your dream life or creating your dream business. But can you just go back to how you got there, how you actually got to writing that book when you left your corporate job and the sort of the gap in between, and what made you actually take the decision to put the time into creating that?
Yeah, no, I will. I'll try and give you the quick summary. And my background, Steve, actually was in the music industry. So when I go back to kind of, you know, my late teens, and I was at the point of deciding, you know, that kind of crossroads, right? You know, you go to university, you spend another however many years studying, and that just really didn't appeal to me at that young age. And I followed my passion and I just followed my heart. It wasn't with any real intent, but at that time, I was very much into dance music, clubbing, DJing. That was what I did every weekend. And there was no real formal route into that industry. It's very much kind of who you know, connections based. And I was very lucky. I got my foot in the door with some work experience at EMI Records, which was situated in Brook Green. And that was in 1998. And I was kind of like 17/18 years old. And yeah, that was kind of my route into the music industry, and built up connections and managed to get a full-time job at EMI. So I was the envy of all my friends who are at uni, you know, eating beans. And I was on VIP list at all the hot clubs in London. So that was really cool. And I spent 4 years there, and then you know, ultimately that led to a career of 16 years in the dance music industry, and had, you know, many successes, lots of number one, you know, UK hits. And fast forward to probably around about 2014, and I think, like many people who are in a job, right, you kind of wake up one day and you think, wow, I'm really kind of just going through the motions here, and on that hamster wheel that so many people find themselves. And I was fortunate at that time, you know, I didn't have, you know, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids. So, you know, sometimes people feel quite trapped in that, you know, they have to continue working because they are reliant on that single source of income. And if they haven't got that single source of income, which is in most people's cases either from a job or from their own business, then they can't afford to pay their monthly outgoings. They can't support their family. And many people find themselves trapped in that situation, and then end up spending the next 20 years doing the same job that they don't really enjoy, they're not passionate about. And, you know, I think that's a very sad situation. And thankfully, I think things are changing. You know, the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and kicking these days, and it's never been easier with all the technology and the systems that we have in place now to be able to start a business, to be able to learn for free, to be able to connect to people all over the world. So there's never been a better time. But I found myself kind of thinking, okay, I've got a choice here. Again, do I spend the next 15, 20 years doing the same job, staying in the music industry, or is now the time for change? And I decided, yeah, it was the time for change. And like many people do, you kind of head to the internet and you start typing keywords in, you see other ways to make money or how can you build wealth? And the usual stuff comes up, right? You can do property, you can trade the markets, you can start an Amazon business, lots and lots of different opinions that exist on the internet. And you become quite overwhelmed, confused, not really sure who to trust. And it's very easy to go down a path where you can spend a lot of money, many thousands of pounds often, really going down a dead end, following what somebody else has said you could be successful at, but not necessarily taking stock of your own experiences, your own interests, your own skill sets. And, I decided to go down the route of property. I sacked my boss. I quit my job at the end of 2015. And that first year of entrepreneurship, when I was fully focused on property, was actually really tough. I was sourcing property deals in London. It was a hot market. And even though I'd invested heavily in my education, had a mentor, I realized at the end of that 12 months that I actually didn't really enjoy it. I wasn't making money from it. I wasn't, it just wasn't the right fit for me. But luckily, just before I left my job, I had come across this website online called meetup.com. And I remember it was about a month before I left my job. And I was looking on there, I was looking for kind of groups of people interested in personal development or, similar situation to that I was in. And I wasn't really finding anything. So I decided to set up my own meetup group. And I called it Escape the Rat Race within 12 months. And when you set up a group on Meetup, you have to pick a date for your first meeting. And I picked a date a couple of weeks into the new year. So just after I quit my job, I was out there on my own. And I thought if 4 or 5 people turn up, we could talk about rich dad, poor dad, 4-hour work week, have a coffee. That'd be quite cool. Well, 40 people turned up that night. They just kept on arriving. And I had this little kind of couple of sofas reserved in a hotel in London. And yeah, there was people everywhere. And so I managed to kind of negotiate a room at the hotel. We were all sat around this table. And I just stood up and I said, well, look, this is my story. I've just quit my job. I'm interested in learning other ways of generating income streams. I'm looking at things online. I'm going to do property. That's my plan. And everyone just got up, said a few words, shared their ideas. The energy in the room was amazing. And then afterwards, I bought everyone a drink at the bar because that was part of the negotiation deal with the hotel to get the room. So everyone had a great night and everyone was buzzing. And we said, okay, well, let's do it again next month. And we had 40 people turn up the following month. And within that first year, had 1,000 people join the Escape the Rat Race meetup group. And as I said, at the end of that first year, and I was reflecting, the property journey was not anything like I had expected it to be, but the Escape the Rat Race had literally come out of nowhere. And that was what I was really passionate about. I loved personal development. I loved helping other people. And it was helping me grow as an individual as well, because I was learning so much. And also, since doing something called Wealth Dynamics, which is basically an online profiling assessment, I realized that I am a deal maker profile and it's my natural flow to connect people together. When I look back at the music industry, I was always the connector. I was bringing different groups of friends together and I had naturally kind of fallen into that flow with what I had set up with Escape the Rat Race. And so I then decided I was going to focus on that and turn that into a business and then built my network. And over the next 2-3 years, that's what I did. I built Escape the Rat Race brand, started a podcast, and then wrote the book.
Cool. That's amazing. Well done for you for finding your path at that sort of quite an early stage coming out of your career. I know that interestingly, I had a similar sort of thing when I left medicine and came out and went back into property because I had previous property experience and development, and it not quite the same way, but I ended up starting a group talking about systems and outsourcing because that's the sort of thing I like to do. I'm a bit of a geek, and yeah, people just sort of levitated towards it. So very interesting to hear that. I didn't know that side of it. So yeah.
Well, cool. I'll add just a caveat there to put some real life learnings and lessons into that. In that it wasn't all a bed of roses by any stretch. I had given up a salary. So a regular source of income, and I had savings. And, you know, you realize when you're relying on savings, they disappear pretty quickly. And that's exactly what happened. And in that first year, I wasn't making money. You know, it was really difficult, and it continued to be difficult even into year 2 and year 3. So I think, you know, the picture that entrepreneurship is always the grass is greener, you know, yay, you know, quit your job, it'll be brilliant, start your own business. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to underline that 10 times. It is not easy. And obviously I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people now over the last few years who've come to my events, and you know, the success rate is not that high. People like the idea of financial freedom. They like the idea of having their own business. But when the reality kicks in of how much hard work it is and how long the time to learn something, and the results are a lagging indicator, they don't come straight away. Many people give up too soon. So, you know, it's not easy. But I think that comes down to your drive and your reason why, because if you want it bad enough, you kind of push through those barriers and you come out the other end. And this is an important point that has driven me for many, many years, Steve, actually, is I first kind of got switched on to personal development back in 2004. A friend of mine put a CD into his car, and it was Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn is like an American, you know, business guru, you could call him. One of the original old school, he's a proper OG. And I just had never heard anything like it. And from that moment, I was just fascinated by this world of personal development, and almost more as a challenge to prove to myself, is this possible, or is it all just BS, you know? And that has been my mission almost. That's been my driver. And I can kind of now say, yeah, it is possible, but it isn't easy.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. I think, you know, if I go back, I've been starting businesses for 20 years, all except my property, which is pretty hard to actually totally fail at unless you go bankrupt on a development project or something. But my property's sort of given me the freedom to fail in lots of other things and not go bankrupt. And I've had 3 failed businesses, and finding something that you're passionate enough about to stick at long enough to get to a point where it actually becomes profitable. I think you've hit the nail on the head. That is probably the biggest reason why most businesses don't. Either they don't have the cash to keep going, like you said, you know, earning nothing for a year, 2 years, 3 years. You need to have either savings or additional streams of income, which I think we'll sort of touch on quite a lot in a few seconds. But if you're trying to do this straight out the bat, you know, I've got friends that their savings have run out and they've just had to go back to work. And that's, you know, it's so sad. I mean, I as an entrepreneur as well, like one of my biggest drivers, you know, I've got family reasons. I love my wife to be able to quit her job and do something she's passionate about. But actually, for me as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of us have this, is that we just want to succeed in business. And when you said that before, it really resonated. Like you just wanted to prove that it was possible. And I think that's a huge part of a driver for me with what I do, is I want to prove to myself that I can be successful in business, because it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So.
And it becomes a game, right? It's like, It's a game. You just get better at the game.
Yeah, hope you can survive long enough in the game and don't go bankrupt too many times before you finally win. So, all right, cool. So, you mentioned the financial challenges of actually coming out and actually starting a business, and I just wondered, because I know you've used virtual assistants now in your business as a way to actually get work done. When did that sort of enter into your world? The idea of outsourcing to other countries, that maybe where you can get work done cheaper than, say, if you're going for a UK-based employee?
Yeah, pretty early, actually. I'd say probably like, you know, year 2. So when you escape the rat race, so, you know, I decided, okay, I'm going to turn this into a business and focus pretty much all my time on this rather than on property. I took on a VA, actually. And I don't know if this is a classic mistake, but I took someone on, and then it almost became a job finding jobs to give them.
Yep.
And it was stressful because I was like, oh God, like the VA is going to turn up in a minute. I haven't got anything for her to do today. And, you know, I just hadn't really got it set up in the way that it needed to be. And I think a lot of people, again, they like the idea and the sound of having a VA, but like you teach, right, is you've got to have a way of training them, of showing them exactly clear instructions of what to do, but also making sure, that you have actually got enough stuff that requires a VA, or certainly understanding the tasks in your business that you should be outsourcing first. And I didn't have any structure at all. There was no real system. I just thought, oh, I'm getting busy, let me take someone on. And it was a bit of a disaster, to be quite honest. And they didn't last very long. And then probably 6 months later, I did take on another VA, and that VA is from the Philippines, and she is still with me today. And that's like, 4 years probably.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I made all those same mistakes. I literally used to make stuff up. I'd be like, oh yeah, I just need these files moving, or like organizing, like trying to create work for her that seemed so she could seem or feel busy or whatever. So yeah, totally resonate with that. Okay, cool. So let's move on now from your escape the rat race period in your life to what you're doing now. And I think one of the things that really struck me, I reread I reread the book Escape the Rat Race. I read it actually a couple of years ago, and one of the things that, if I look at the stuff you talk about in that book and then what you do now, I mean, there's a massive congruence between those two things. And the values come over really strongly in, you talk about this in the book, that you need to be sure the path you go on is in line with your values, because then I think it's Dr. DeMartini you quote in the book, and again, and a great author for this on this sort of subject, is if you find something that's totally in line with your values and you're heading towards that, then sort of obstacles move out the way, because you don't see them as obstacles, you see them as challenges to be overcome. And I think that, just like thinking about you finding Kevin, I'm really interested in how that happened, because it seems like you're sort of like a match made in heaven almost. And, I'm really interested to hear that story and how you actually became partner in that partnership with him.
Yeah, so you're referring to Kevin Whelan, who's the founder of WealthBuilders. And yes. Kevin was someone that I met on the very first ever property networking event I attended in London, which was in 2014. I was still, in my job at that point at the record label. And I was kind of getting my head switched on to this new world, right? This new world of property and entrepreneurship and all of this. I just trundled along to a property networking event in London, and Kevin Whelan was speaking that night. And he was speaking about pensions, and in the music industry, pensions are not particularly a big topic, right? So it was nothing of any interest to me, really, the topic of pensions. But Kevin just had this kind of, amazing presence, and what he was talking about was just mind blowing. Just how it could help people. And at the end of that presentation, I went up to Kevin and I said, that was great. I generally had never really heard anything like it before, and we connected. And we spoke the following day, actually. And from there, really just kind of stayed in touch. And I invited Kevin to speak at the third Escape the Rat Race event that I held, which was a year later. And Kevin came and talked about WealthBuilders, which was his company. And Kevin's been helping people, business owners and entrepreneurs, to build wealth and become financially independent for, over 10 years now. And it's following a process that Kevin created for himself, really, which is around some wonderful IP based on the 7 pillars of wealth. Essentially, that in order to stop trading time for money, the only way that that's possible is to learn how to create and build assets, so that assets work hard for you rather than you working hard for money, as in the words of Robert Kiyosaki. And, obviously I was very in tune with this already, but Kevin was, probably catering for a slightly different avatar. As I say, the business owners, people who perhaps had already got some assets in their life, but just really wanted to learn how to create multiple streams of income from different asset classes. And so Kevin spoke at my event. He talked about, the model, and it took a few years for Kevin and me to just build that relationship. It was very organic. We were both really, focused on helping people achieve the same thing, but just in a slightly different approach. And it took, 4 maybe 5 years before we actually got together again, which was the end of 2018, early 2019, and just realized that we could really help each other. We could work together to create something bigger than the individual parts. And coming back to Wealth Dynamics again, for anyone that's familiar with that, Kevin is a kind of very creative person, comes up with lots of ideas, star profile, and good at kind of communicating, getting the message out there. And I'm a deal maker, which is much more tempo energy, which is, very much about taking an idea and getting it done. It's about getting the people together, making sure that things are just getting done. So together we work really well as a team. And Kevin invited me basically to help him create a membership program for the Wealth Builders community. And it was really just pulling everything out of Kevin's brain that he had learned over the last 10 years about building wealth and putting it into a very easy to follow step-by-step process, a system that anybody could follow to build their wealth. And that's exactly what we've done. And over the last 2 years since we launched that, we now have over 250 entrepreneurial employees and business owners who are following those steps, who are moving from a place of financial insecurity where they're relying on that one source of income every month. And we know that that is risky, because whether it's from a job or from a business, as we've seen with the COVID situation, that could disappear tomorrow. And if you're relying on one source of income, you don't want to be in that position. So the only way is to really start diversifying, and the only way is to start learning about these different asset classes. And so, we've got people moving from that insecurity to a place where they're financially secure now within 2 to 3 years, and then financially independent within 5 to 7 years. And that just gives people peace of mind. It gives people the freedom to do what they want on their own terms, to travel, to spend time with their families. And, it's absolutely amazing. It's everything that I love. And working with Kevin, collaborating, having someone else is just, it takes all the weight off your shoulders. And it's a top tip for anyone who's in business on their own. If you're feeling the pain, definitely look at who's around that you could collaborate with.
Yeah. Wise words. So just before I delve a little bit deeper into the core of this methodology that you teach, the recurring revenue roadmap, I just want to touch on the partnership thing, because you've hit the nail on the head where you say, getting a partner in business can be a huge help. I mean, I've had partnerships in the past and partnerships that haven't worked out for whatever reason. So I've been on both sides of it as well. And I think that what I am always fascinated by is what makes a good partnership, one that lasts. And I know you've mentioned now that, with Wealth Dynamics, anyone that isn't familiar, I would recommend checking it out. So Roger Hamilton is the creator, and just do a Google search for Wealth Dynamics. And there's a free version called Genius U. You can just check out and just get a taster for 10, so to speak. But this idea of having people on sort of opposite ends of the wealth dynamics to complement each other. So what you're good at, maybe Kevin isn't so good at, and what Kevin's good at, maybe you're not so good at. And that ability to be able to then share the workload is huge. I just wonder how much you knew about each other and your strengths before you decided to go at it together, or was that something you learned after the fact and just it was luck?
No, we did know that about one another, and that was why it was good to just organically let that relationship build over time. And actually, it's a fundamental aspect of one of the 7 pillars that we teach. One of these 7 pillars, and we refer to pillars, is assets, basically. And one of them is joint ventures.
Go on, give us the 7 pillars, just so we've got it.
I'll run through them so we're not keeping anyone in suspense.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first one is home capacity. So what we're talking about here is that, if you own your own home, for most people, that takes money out of your pocket every month. But you can turn your home into an asset, so it actually brings money in to your pocket. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One way is if you've got spare room, like capacity indoor, you could rent rooms out and have a lodger, and that would bring some cash flow. Or you might have space outside. So you might be able to convert a garage or an outhouse into an Airbnb, and that could create a cash flow, an income stream. So that's a couple of examples there. There's more as well. The second pillar is that Wonderful topic of pensions, that one that really, kept me.
I think I've actually seen that same presentation by Kevin at a property event as well. So yeah, I know the one you mean.
And pensions are actually one of the most overlooked assets that exist, because most people have got a pension, and most people have got, if they've been working for 20, 30, 40 years, that pension could be quite a sizable sum. And most people think that it's locked away, they can't access it until they're 55. And that's not the case. There's a certain type of pension which we specialize in at WealthBuilders, which is for business owners. So we call it the director's pension, and it allows you actually to access your personal and your workplace pensions, and actually start using it now in your business, in your property portfolio. So it's a way to leverage that money that you think is locked away. You're not earning very much. You get that statement every year, and you look at it and you're not very impressed, and you file it away until next year. Well, you can actually transform your pension right now. So that's, that second asset class. The third pillar is investment. So just, most people have got some money either in savings or an ISA or in some shares. The problem with these first three pillars is they're all based on the markets, right? So the housing market, the stock market, which is where the pensions are invested. And, if you've got savings, again, it's in the market. So we have no control over the market. It goes up and it goes down. And if you were looking to retire in 2008 and all your money was tied up in the market, then it wasn't a very pretty picture, and very, very sad situation for many people. So those are the first three. We call those the traditional pillars. Now, the only way we believe to really transform and build your wealth is to perhaps use some of that money that's locked away in those three pillars, but to move it to the other side, to the entrepreneurial pillars. And pillar number 4 is property portfolio. So this is obviously owning property, which you rent out, and somebody else is paying that off for you. So you can get a much better return on your money there, as you well know, Steve, from property. Instead of different strategies, but you can get up 8, 12, 10, 12%, even more in certain strategies. And then pillar number 5 is business. So there's all sorts of different business, but if you really understand business and you get it working for you, then business as an asset, a true asset, is a business that works without you. So this is very on point with what we're talking about today. Is the only way to achieve that is by leveraging systems or leveraging people. So that's a way to extract yourself from the day-to-day of the business, and the returns in business can be infinite. Pillar number 6 is intellectual property. So that's actually turning your knowledge into some kind of product or service that you can create once, but it can pay you over and over again. So this could be writing a book, could be creating a course, coming up with a system that you license out to people. So there's many different ways that it can create IP. And then the final pillar is joint ventures, as I spoke about, which is two parties coming together to create a win-win situation where there's an income stream generated, which you can split. And when any one of those is nice on its own, but as I said earlier, one of anything is risky. So building your wealth in one of those pillars, and for many people that's property, who knows what the government might do? Who knows what might happen in the world? So whilst you can diversify within property, you're kind of still putting your eggs in one basket to some degree. So the more pillars you can diversify across, if you can have some income coming from property, some from investments, some perhaps using your pension, some from a business, joint ventures, the more pillars, the more financially bulletproof you'll be. And that's a process and a system that Kevin has created, and now we've developed, as I say, into a step-by-step process that anybody can follow.
Brilliant. That is gold for anyone who isn't aware of the 7 classes, or actually thinking about the value of actually splitting your portfolio, so to speak, across different asset classes. And I think that is a real gem. And it's one of the big reasons I moved away from just being in property, was that fear of, I just started thinking, what if the property market crashes when I'm in the middle of doing a big development? This is when I was sort of thinking about going into commercial conversions or big commercial projects. And I was thinking, if all your eggs in one basket and something happens to the market, it's exactly that. I needed to find some other way. I already had property, so as you say, I needed to find a new pillar to build a second stream. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Although I still have some other streams to go, so I'll be tapping you up for some tips in the near future, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, we know, Steve, don't we? A lot of people listening now will be small business owners, and we know what it's like to be a small business owner.
Yeah.
You get so excited by it, right? You just live and breathe your business, and often you kind of have this tunnel vision. It's all you think about is your business. But, we're trying to get you to get funnel vision, which is look beyond your business. So how can you use your pension to, fuel your business? Maybe there's equity in your property that you can fuel your business and get greater returns. There's going to be joint ventures. You can accelerate your business like that, or perhaps you can create some IP. And there's so many ways that you can boost your business when you think about these other 6 pillars.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think most people, that it's probably becoming more and more common these days, is about creating IP from your own expertise, a bit like exactly what you've done with the Wealth Academy, WealthBuilders Academy, is that having this knowledge trapped in your head and being the expert and coaching people one-to-one is great, and you can change people's lives, and that's fantastic. But actually, what more can you do if you can actually create something that more people can access, and maybe even slightly more affordable, so they can get into your knowledge, get into your expertise that you spent 10, 20 years building up, but at a much lower price point. But that's all recurring revenue for you. You create it once, you set and forget, so to speak. Obviously, it needs updating, to keep it concurrent or current with, whatever the trends are. But the idea is the bulk of the work's done. And that's something I think a lot of people that maybe overlook, but maybe the knowledge of that's becoming more widespread. But simple things like that, I think, can make a huge difference. So just before I do forget, we were talking about partnerships, and I just want to finish on this because I know we dipped into the 7 pillars as we started talking about partnerships. But the question I posed to you was, how much sort of background knowledge did you get about each other before you started? And you answered and said, you actually spent years getting to know each other. I think that is gold as well, that people rush in, and I can count myself as one of these people in the past, rush into partnerships because you're so excited about the new opportunity, you think, oh, this is going to be great. We can share the wealth, and you may hardly know the person. And so I think that is, gold. I just wanted to touch on that because I think sort of hearing that, someone else saying that now, actually me looking back in hindsight thinking, maybe that was actually something I should have done a bit more due diligence on. So I think that was something I wanted to pick up on. Is there any other tips you can think about why your partnership with Kevin seems to be so strong and be so successful, that you can share to help anyone thinking about starting a JV with somebody?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely, I think, is one of the key aspects, is the complementary skills, is really knowing what you're good at and knowing where you need to work with other people. And Wealth Dynamics is a system in itself. It's a system for entrepreneurs. So, definitely, do check that out, as you mentioned, Steve. I don't know. Perhaps, there's a bit of luck. Sometimes you just get lucky, right? There's a click and things work. And again, that didn't happen overnight. So, I think it was kind of by design.
Cool. All right. Well, I do want to just finish with a couple of signature questions, if I can just borrow a few more minutes of your time. But so here we go. So what are your 3 favorite apps or browser plugins, and why?
Oh, okay. Well, God, my Google Chrome is just full of extensions. I mean, one that I find actually really handy is one called Eyedropper. And it basically just allows you to click it and pick up the color on a page. So if you're doing kind of landing pages, any kind of marketing stuff, and you just need to just grab a color. I find Eyedropper, that I use that a lot as well. I also use let's have a look. What's on the home screen? Well, look, we talk about Asana. I know you absolutely love Asana, but we could not run the business without Asana. That is our project management tool.
Yeah.
And another one, trying to think of one a little bit different, rather than the usual ones.
I thought iDropper was a good one. I thought I was the only one that knew about that, so I'm impressed.
Well, I mean, for podcasting, we're recording on Zoom, but one platform I've used for a long time is called Zencastr. So that is Zencastr. And, that's a great platform. It used to be audio only, but now they've introduced video, and you can literally just send a link to someone. And as soon as they click the link, you're speaking to each other over the internet, and it records it and uploads it directly into Dropbox. So it's really, really good.
Yeah, cool. I've not heard that one. So that's a great tip. Thank you very much. All right. So who else would you think would be a great guest on this podcast?
Oh, I'm going to refer back to Wealth Dynamics again and the Steely People, right? Because there's 4 types of profiles really there. You've got the creative people. You've got the people who are really connected and love, engagement. You've got people who are very grounded and service driven. And then you've got the detail people who love to optimize and systemize and pull things apart and put them back together. So I'm trying to think of who my Steely connections are. I'm never good at being put on the spot, Steve. So, I've got to struggle.
I'll come back to it
with a name.
Yeah. I'll come back to it. I don't want to keep you on the spot at all. So the title of this podcast is Systemize Your Success. What does success mean to you?
Well, I think it's happiness. Success means different things to different people. But if you wake up every day happy, then I think you've been successful.
Brilliant answer. And lastly, do you believe you can systemize your success?
Absolutely.
And why?
Why? I think everything ultimately, if you look around, is a series of kind of processes and systems, whether we acknowledge it and pay attention to it. But you absolutely must systemize your business. That is absolute guarantee. Systemizing your success. Well, yeah, I think you've got to enjoy the journey, right? Your success is something I don't think you can necessarily engineer. You might have an idea, and you should have an idea of what the outcome is that you're looking for, but I don't think any plan will work. It won't go to plan. There's going to be a lot of bumps along the way. So I think, you can definitely systemize a fair bit of your success, but the other part is a little bit of a mystery.
Mystery or luck or something in the middle.
Combination of all those things.
All right, brilliant. Christian, thank you so much. Just before I go, how can people contact you? And is there anything you want to share with our community while you're here?
Yeah, well, if anyone listening is interested in what we've been talking about today, then we just launched the WealthBuilders Academy, which is the program where we help business owners and entrepreneurial employees to build wealth and become financially independent within 5 years. So just by heading over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/academy, we'll get you all the information. And also, I actually, host a podcast every week as well. So if you're interested in listening to kind of all things money and finance, but in a fun conversational way, not boring, then search Wealth Talk, all one word, Wealth Talk podcast on all the usual places.
Fantastic. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well, so you can find them at your leisure. Christian, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you very much for taking your time out today.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. I'm well aware there are hundreds of great business podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to this one, and for that I am truly grateful. Hopefully what you heard today took you one step closer to building a successful business, so you can share your passion with the world and serve an ever-growing number of people. If you got value out of today's episode, then so will someone else that you know. By sharing with others what has helped you along your way, you will grow your influence and be the guy or girl that everybody wants to know. So please hit the share button right now, and also remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. It's impossible for me to cover absolutely everything in these podcasts, so please do head over to systemizeyoursuccess.com right now and download the show notes, transcriptions, and some of my best frameworks and systems for free. Thanks again for tuning in and being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, this is Dr. Steve Day, and you've been listening to Systemize Your Success.